And it says,
Okay, there we go. There we
there
go.
we go. Hello, everyone. Happy Black History Month to all of you. And thank you so much for joining us today for Cara Collective's Finding My Voice. And we're so excited to spend a little lunchtime chat with you all. I am very excited to be here with my friend, my sister, someone who's a role model to me, Dominique Jordan Turner. She currently serves as the Vice President of Institutional Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Loyola University in Chicago. And DJT, while I know this is your newest role, you are well known for more than that. You are a leader in the social sector space. You are an author. Your impact has been felt here in Chicago and beyond. And often I feel like there's nothing that you can't do. So I am so excited to have you joining us here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to be invited to these spaces and to share them with people that you not only respect but like. And you are one of my favorite people as well. You just bring sunshine everywhere you go, and your energy is contagious. So I'm excited for our girl chat.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm just gonna channel my inner Oprah and just jump right in because we don't have a lot of time. So
Yeah.
we got a lot, few things to talk about today.
Hmm.
So let's start with this. Um, as I think about Black History Month and the inspirational leaders that we have to look up to, I think about the fact that you inspire so many people, and I know that you have served as a mentor to many more. As a kid, who was that person for you? What did you want to be when you grew up, and are you even close to being that person?
Oh, I love that question. And it's funny that you mentioned Oprah because anybody who knows me knows that I wanted to be Oprah. I did. I watched Oprah every day after school, and so I credit Oprah for a lot of who I am today. But I've had a ton of role models, starting, obviously with my mother, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday, Mama, if you're watching.
Oh,
But I had a mentor growing up, and I talk about her often. Her name was Dorena Brown. I was part of a program, a trio program. It was for first generation students. And Dorena Brown was this beautiful Black woman who was probably 6'1". I had never seen a woman like her. She wore dresses and big earrings and heels, and she smelled good. And I had never met a Black woman like that before. And so she came into this space. She pulled me to aside once, and she said, there's something special about you, and I want to know if you're interested in going to college. And she said, I want to see to it that you go. And it was something about her saying that to me that just changed my life. It's like, this
mm,
woman thinks that I can go to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college, but it was something about her being who she was and speaking those words to me that just transformed everything. And I, as a result of that, became one of the first to go to college, and so many more things after that. But absolutely, mentors since then until now.
that's so beautiful, and it's one of those things of when someone sees much more in you than you see in yourself. The
Absolutely.
limits are endless, right? The
Mhm.
possibilities are endless, and so that's such a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit more about what drives us, what drives you personally. The work that we're driven to do is complex, as you know.
Mhm.
At Cara Collective, which is a workforce development social enterprise, our vision is to fuel a national movement to eradicate relational and financial poverty. That's no small feat, right?
Mhm.
And I know that I've worked to tackle some systemic issues around education, and I know that you have done that as well. But given the interconnectedness of so many of these social challenges that we face, what's one issue that you personally want to create change around?
Yeah. Again, for those who know me, they know I love Black people. I love Blackness, and I always say I'm black. If there's a scale of blackness, I love being Black. And what I mean by that, like, so that's the area that I'd like to shift. I think there is a deficit mindset when it comes to people of color, when it comes to Black people in particular. And I did a TED talk several years ago that was entitled "Poverty is a Superpower." And I think being Black is a superpower. And sometimes we
Mm,
look and we say, oh, woe is me, or woe is them, or we look, and we pity certain populations. But when I tell you, like, me being Black, me coming from growing up poor, it I developed superpowers. And I think I developed being poor, being Black. I had to become resilient, resourceful, creative. I had to tap into things that my white peers, for example, may not have had to. And so I see that as a superpower. And I want other people who look like me to lead with that and to say, for those reasons, I am competent and capable of being in this room. But I also want the people who surround us to recognize that and not necessarily look upon with a sense of pity or deficit-based vision. So I'm excited about Blackness in general and creating equity when it comes to people of color.
I love that. I love that. And I think that one of the things that raises for me too is just the rich depth of color and beauty that there is within the Black community, right? And we might have some similarities, but we all have some shared experiences too. But there are some things that differentiate us, right? And there are things that make us, each of us, individual and unique, and that's such a beautiful thing. And you know, I think about my background and my parents who are from Haiti, and just how that has influenced who and how I walk as a Black woman in today's society. So I couldn't agree with you more. I just thinking about how to change that deficit mindset and helping folks recognize that. But that works.
I'm curious though, Kathleen, for you, but being from Haiti, what would you say is one of those differences versus me being from the South Side of Chicago?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think one of the things is that there are for sure times where there are some experiences that folks who are children of immigrants face that I can relate more to sometimes than folks who have been here for generations, right? And so there's a shared Blackness, of course, but there's a difference in sometimes in experience and what that meant for my parents who had to come over from another country, not speaking the language, not necessarily understanding the resources, but then there's also a shared reality of, even if you've been here for generations, not necessarily having access to those same resources as well. Yeah. So it's a complex identity, right? It's a complex identity, but it's one, again, that's really rich and really beautiful. And this work that you talk about, trying to shift that narrative, it's not easy, right? Like, this work can be overwhelming. I mean, I know I get energized sometimes and feel very hopeful about how far we've come as a society. And sometimes, if I'm keeping it real, I struggle with how far we still have to go, right? What do you think is the biggest achievement that we've seen from a racial equity lens?
You know, I mean, gosh, I in the same way that Oprah is like the go-to for Black people, I hate to go to this answer, but it's the election of our first Black president, right? And it's amazing, right? It is amazing. It is by no means the end of the road. It by no means says that we have conquered racism and that we're in a post-racial society. It absolutely is. But I think about my grandmother, who has since passed away, and she never in a million years would have thought that this was possible. Even when he was running, I remember us having conversations, and she would say, there ain't no way that they're going to elect this Black, there's no way. Like, I don't even know if she believed in him until he got into the office. And so it was just an interesting, just in my own lifetime, I don't think that I ever thought that I would see this, and that she clearly didn't. And so I think, I think through the lens of my daughter, right, who is 12, soon to be 13. She was born several months after he was inaugurated, and that's all that she's seen. So she's come into the world seeing what is possible. And that it gives me chills to think about how her life will be different and how she positions herself, knowing that that's a norm for her.
Yes. And I love that you brought up your daughter, whom I adore. And I just want to talk about her for a minute, because I think, I think that one of the hardest things it is that I've found myself allowing myself is grace, right? Particularly as a working mother. And you have an incredibly accomplished daughter, as you mentioned, Kennedy, who's also already an author and learning what it means to be a CEO, following in the footsteps of her mother. And I know my daughter, Mia, has enjoyed talking with her. And she's asking when we can schedule a play date with Kennedy, so we need to get that on the calendar. But seriously, how do you manage being a working mother, being a role model, being that Black mama who needs to be that strong person for your daughter. How do you manage doing all of those things while also trying to provide her with enough guidance as she grows? How do you balance all that?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer, but you gotta promise to answer too, because I know I don't have it all figured out. I don't.
Yes.
And it's still a struggle, and it gets more difficult even as she's entered into her teenage years. But the philosophy that I've taken since she was born is like work-life balance is a crock of, stuff, but it's like chasing a purple unicorn. Like you're never going to find balance. Like for us, for women like us who love working, I know you love working. I know you have a personal passion and a mission. So do I. And so, I also love my job as mom. So I always think about this as work-life integration. And so that's the term that I use all the time. It's like, how do I clearly am bringing work home, but I have to bring home into work. And so one of the things that I've always done, so when Kennedy would have a day off school, rather than get a babysitter or a nanny or something, I would bring her to work with me, right? And she would be my assistant. So she would get up close and personal to see what mommy does. If I have a speaking engagement, she's sitting in the front row taking pictures. She's shaking hands. She's, meeting the people. She's working the room. I remember we went to an event, and so she's like working the room. She comes back and she's like, Mom, I met these 3 amazing women. One is a Black woman in tech, and you need to meet her. And so I'm like, oh shit, this girl is serious.
Networking for you.
Networking. And that was the first time I was like, wow, like it's paying off, right? And so I don't separate the two. She knows exactly what I do. She knows what my job is, what my challenges are, from personnel things to strategic things. And so that's the way I manage. And it gives me peace to know that she doesn't feel slighted. She's brought into those conversations, but she's learning at the same time.
I love that. And I love how just open you are with her, right? Because I think that I know for me early on, even in parenthood, it was like shelter almost to a degree, right? Like shelter her from those things. But to your point, bringing them in, letting them see from early on what's important, how it really works, how tough it is, but how rewarding it is, and what a role model you can be for others is huge, right? I mean, we joke that my daughter, who's 6, she'll be 7 in a couple of months, she does a lot of imaginative play, and she will pretend to be a CEO. And I don't know how many little girls who are 6 years old are thinking about, let alone Black girls who are thinking about, like, what does it mean to be, I'm going to pretend to be a CEO. Yes. And you have to come in our office, and you better bring a business card why you're there and what value you're about to add to her day. That's and if she's on a call, do not interrupt her.
Oh, okay, girl. I love it.
But I think the thing that one of the things that I mentioned at the top of that question was really just grace, just allowing yourself to say, like, and you said it too, DJT, right? We don't have it all figured out. And I think being real, being vulnerable, being open about the challenges and the successes, about the road, the journey that it takes to get to where you are is not always easy. But when you have a community around you, when you have the support system, when you're open and you ask for help, those things can come. So I love that you shared that.
I love it. So yeah. So it's funny you mentioned grace. The last thing I'll say about this, I have never believed in tattoos. I'm gonna be vulnerable for a second. I got a tattoo recently, and it says grace required right here. And it's a reminder to me, because I am hard on myself. Oh my God, I'm hard on others. I'm hard with the world. So it's a reminder to myself, like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of weight. Especially when you're the first, especially when you're a mom, or especially when you're a CEO, all the titles that we wear, like, we think we have to show up having it all figured out. And it's a reminder to me, but it's also a reminder to others, because sometimes I put the weight on my own shoulders, but other people will dump their stuff on us. And so it's a reminder to other people too on how to handle me. Like, I require some grace, and I need you to lead with that as well. So
Exactly. No, you're, the talking about the sort of putting the stuff on us, that's a real thing, and I think about, I was just reading an article about how Black women in particular are often brought into positions of leadership as a fixer.
To turn it around, Olivia Pope it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
For problems that predated their tenure, right? And
Mhm.
how often we're expected to take on much more than our counterparts who don't typically look like us
Yeah.
without the appropriate resources to succeed. You know, as a Black female leader, what would you characterize as your greatest challenge in a leadership role?
Whew. Ooh, now that's a loaded question. It's a loaded question, and I think it is. I would say there's a lot of challenges, first of all, and I think that this is one that may speak to Black people in general. But I was on a call actually this morning talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and culture in our workspaces and campus. And one of the things that I hear and experience being a professional in white spaces is that people say they love diversity and they love to have a Black face at the table or a person of color at the table, but only if we are performing white, only if we are performing and fitting into this box that is whiteness that we sometimes call professional. But the moment that I show up as my authentic self, all of a sudden we have a problem. The moment that I show up and speak from a different perspective or challenge or push back, there is a problem. And so I think there's always this walk of like, how do you create change? How do you get into those rooms? How do you finesse getting in the room at the table, um, and leading with authenticity at the same time? Right. And so that's just a balance every day. And so for me, one of the things, again, for people who know me, I am Dominique, right? But I do have an alter ego, and her name is Mika, right? And she's a little hood, she's a little urban, she's a little edgy, right? So I have to balance who shows
Yeah,
up, and sometimes
yeah.
Mika needs to show up because sometimes there's things that needs to be spoken to. So it's a balance.
It absolutely is a balance. I think about the work that we do at Care Collective with our participants and helping them think about how to be the most successful. And it's exactly that, right? Thinking about the balance of how do you stay true to your authentic self, but yet think about what it means to read a room and to have the tools and the resources to say, this is who I need to be right now to get to where I need to go, but yet maintain a sense of who you are. And it is a balance. It's something that's not easy. And I think it's particularly challenging for people of color who, when you think about code switching, when you think it's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like when you think about the way that you talk with your girlfriends versus the way that you might talk
Yeah,
at a board meeting, right?
absolutely.
It is very
Absolutely.
different, and it's a skill set that it's learned and fine tuned as you realize what are the ways that you can continue to be successful
Mhm.
in life, for
Yeah,
sure.
I had a mentor, and I put this on my office door. Her phrase to me often, and it's a great reminder. She says, "Dominique, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective?" Right? Do
Mm,
you? And I sit with that. I say I want to be both. You know what I mean? I want to be both. But
yes.
right sometimes is like you could that could be synonymous with a lot of things, right? Do you want to speak truth directly every time you feel offended, or do you want to figure out the long game,
Yeah.
right? Do you want to be strategic about it, right? So I think about just the binary way of having to walk in the world of authentic and a leader representing my people who are looking to me to be their voice in that room, um, while at the same time dosing it out in amounts that are going to be palatable.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Don't want to give him too much. Don't want to give him too much. Too much Mika.
I know they're gonna get her though.
They have to go. They have to, right?
You
And
do.
and she's never not there. That's the truth. Is that she's never not there.
Absolutely.
That's who you're bringing always. And I
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
and I feel that too. And I always joke with my daughter. I'm like, I think you forget that you have a Haitian mama. Like I
Hmm.
like we can,
Exactly. Don't
there
get
are
it
things, there
twisted.
are things that
Yeah.
are allowable in Haiti that might not be allowable here in the United States. Don't
Absolutely.
make me revert to any of those.
I
Um,
love it.
so we just had, for some people might celebrate Valentine's Day, and it's all about love. Question I want to ask you is, what do you love about yourself?
I think what we were just talking about, right? That is, I love that I can be all the things, right? I can be all the things, and I am all the things, right? I can show up in at a gala and be Dominique, but I can show up in the hood and be Mika, right? And relate. I can show up in a student setting, right, and have some credibility. And I could show up in a board meeting and have some credibility. And I think that grace and that vision and that sensitivity to nuance and difference in one person allows me to see other people in that way too, right? So I think I have an ability to see you, right? And I think that's all we want, is to be seen, right, for who we are, not for our
Absolutely.
titles, not for our, background and all these superficial things. My I look to see people, and
Yeah.
I think that's my superpower.
That I love that, and it's related to something that I think that I love about myself too, is that just that genuine curiosity about people. I think that
Mhm.
sometimes, people are like, wow, I've never had somebody ask me so many questions about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And I really am genuinely looking for that connection, to your point of like
Mhm.
wanting to see people.
Yep.
And so just that to me is something that I love, just understanding what does it mean to be seen by someone, right?
Yeah.
And to be seen by someone, you have to really have that genuine curiosity about them. I
So
love that.
true.
I
So that's
love
why
that.
I love you. That's exactly, absolutely.
I know, I
Because
know.
it's like you've known you your whole life, right? You make these instant connections because of that. So absolutely one of your
And
super.
I mean, I haven't met a wall that I couldn't talk to.
I love that.
And as we think about our younger selves, there was, as we look at you, DJT today, someone might say, wow, got it together, she's got it figured out. But you alluded to this, is like, you don't always have the right answers. We're trying to figure it out just like everybody else, right?
Mhm.
What is, and I'm sure there was a lot of awkwardness in figuring it out while you were younger. What is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self to help her maybe get where you are now even faster?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, one of the things that has led me here is the belief that everything is figure outable, right? I do know that every problem has a solution. And I learned that from my mom, right? Like there was never anything that I didn't think that she could do or accomplish. Um, Now, I think, yeah, so everything has an answer. And so I will hustle to figure that out. And I think sometimes when I figured it out, or sometimes when I got in the room, I've never not always been this confident and
Mhm.
self-assured that I belong in that room, right? So I would tell my younger self that I do belong in the room, that I am smart enough, that I am good enough. I used to think that white people had some special magic or intelligence about them, that somehow there was something different about them that I didn't have, that was only reserved for white people. And I say white people, and I use a binary of white and black because I grew up, in a small town after I left Chicago, in a small town that was just white and black. And so there were black people who lived a certain place and white people lived a certain. So I always thought that there was some magic, but over the years, I've gotten into those rooms and I
Mhm.
realized that we are the same, right? That I
Mhm.
am smart enough, right? That there's no special magic or special sauce that's in that room. There might be different exposures and experiences, that maybe I didn't have, but I do belong in that room. And because I've been in those rooms now, it's like, why was I fretting this whole time?
Right, right,
And actually, they
right.
need me in these rooms. Like, how
And they
many
need
times
you
have
in
you
these
been in a
rooms.
room where they were like, oh,
Yes.
that's a good question. Well, I would have never thought about it that way, right? They need us in those rooms because our lived experience adds some color to this ever changing world. And it's changing so fast. And they don't
Right.
know the things that we know. And so we bring a unique perspective that's going to add to a better outcome.
Right,
So,
absolutely. It's like what our dear friend Liz Thompson says, right? You are who you are, not despite you, but
yeah,
because of where you come from, right? That
yeah,
is a superpower, as you mentioned. That's it's amazing, and I love that. And I think I would add to that, as I think about my awkward, lanky, tall, younger self.
I need to see
I was
pictures. I need
always
pictures.
the tallest. And then whenever they said line up by height order, I always, I knew I was always going to be the one in the back. Always, always.
Mhm.
But I think to your point of just you belong in that room, and it's okay not to know, because not everyone else doesn't always know either, right? And it's okay to
Mhm.
say, I don't know, but to your point, let's figure it out together,
Yeah,
right? And so not to feel I would say stymied by having to have the answer, right? Or having
yeah,
to feel like I can't be in the room unless I've got it all figured out,
yeah.
because everyone else is figuring it out too. you know, and I
Absolutely.
think once we recognize that, then that allows us to feel like we belong, right? And
Absolutely.
right,
It's
right,
it all boils back down to confidence, right? And the book that my daughter and I wrote together, Little Black Pearls for Little Black Girls, underneath all of it, it's about building confidence. And that's what I know today that I didn't know then. Like confidence is the seed to all things success, right? So if you believe you can, yes, you
right,
can, right? So
right,
I didn't want anything else for my child when I had her. I just prayed, Lord, just I want her to have a sense of confidence and a belief
right,
in herself. That's all.
right.
Everything else will take care of itself.
Exactly.
That
That's
confidence.
exactly right. That's exactly right. That's something that we at Cara Collective remind our participants of, right? Know the deepest truth of who you are. And if you know
Mhm.
that, then you take that confidence
Yes,
into a room, into any room,
absolutely.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that that's a beautiful thing for especially young Black girls to remember that confidence and
Mhm.
to take that forward.
Yeah.
Um, so as you know, we're getting close to our time here. So I want to just kind of wrap up as we think about, you know, we don't know, we don't have all the answers. We didn't know the right path necessarily. We had mentors, guides, advisors along the way to help us in life. But as you think about who you are today and what you want to leave behind, what are you hoping to leave as your legacy? How do you want to be remembered? And maybe
Mhm.
even when you think about young leaders, especially young Black female leaders, what do you want them to know?
Mm.
What's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
That's a powerful question, and the older I get, the more in front of me that question is becoming. There's a couple of things. The most important thing is that anything is possible, right? If
Mm,
you think about my beginning story, the zip code that I was born into, the parents that I was born to, none of this would have been predicted, right? None of this. And so if people look at me, I want them to believe, like if she did it, of course I can do it, right? There is no special magic. There is no special sauce. There was no trick. There was no hookup. There was no anything, no silver spoon, any of that. I want people to say, like, anything is possible. Anything that I've dreamt up, I've done. And I'm so excited. I look forward to going to bed at night to dream of what that next thing is. And so at the same time, I want people to look at my life and say, that girl lived, right? She didn't just work. She lived. She had fun. She rode this thing till the wheels came off. Like she lived. Like, and so I want people to have that balance. Like, I love life. I love laughing. I love belly laughs. I love friends. And so, like, I
mm,
love life, right? I love my work. I love my family, but I just love this life. And so I want to live it out loud, and I
mm.
want other people to as well. So,
I love that. Work hard, play
oh
hard,
yeah.
right? That's definitely a legacy worth leaving behind.
Yes.
I love that. Um,
And you can't get out of here without sharing yours, ma'am.
you know, I think that there's so much in what you said because I think one of my bios in one of my social media platforms is something like work hard, play hard, or something along those lines. So to your point of finding that balance, I think you're right that we've got to sort of remove that work life. It's just balance, period, full stop. And how do we make that happen? I've been thinking about that just in my personal life, thinking about that at work. You know, what does that look like for others, for those that I work with? Just thinking about what does that balance look like? So that's a big piece. But of course that impact, right? You want to make sure that you've left an impact. You've left this world a better place. And one of the things that I think about and that I talk about often, again, my with my Haitian upbringing, is thinking about the access, the opportunity, the equity that was devoid from my parents' life when we were growing up, and from some of our lives too, my brothers and sisters and I. And so thinking about how can I make an impact in those spaces around access, improving access, increasing opportunities for people, thinking about what equity means, right? Like that's to me is huge. But I also like to have fun too. I'm gregarious. You know, like you said, I bring a lot of energy, and so I want to be able to do that because this work is hard enough. And
Oh,
so
tell me about it.
we can't smile, if we can't hug, if we can't laugh with each other while we're trying to do this hard work, then it's going to be even that much harder. So
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely. Last thing I'll say, Kathleen, I think so many people look up when they look for mentors. I just want to just recognize, like, you have to look to your left and right. I see you and am inspired by what you do every day. I see you as a peer mentor, and I love you for what you do, not just at Cara Collective, but just who you are in the world. And so I just thank you for being you and showing up as your authentic self every day.
Thank you so much, DJ Chief, for joining us. Has been an incredible conversation to have with you. You know, we're continuing, as we said, to find our voice. Through this journey of life and love and work and play, and you're doing it fabulously with some red lipstick.
Well, thank you for noticing.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. And we hope to hear from you if you have any questions. You know how to reach me. You can reach CJT. We'd love to do any follow-ups that you might have. But thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Happy Black History Month.